Okay, this is going to be a walkthrough of the Codecademy Introduction to JavaScript course. I'm not looking at any of the pro sections. So what I'm going to do, let's have a look at the overview. So JavaScript is an amazing language that is used in a lot of situations, but the most common place you're going to find it is on websites. And it works on the client, so that basically means it works on your browser and on your computer to create the interactive components of websites and web pages. It's really powerful, it can do a lot. Obviously you can actually write a lot of other programs with it as well. Okay, so this will look through just some fundamental key things about programming, and as you can sort of see here, you can actually use it to build games, interactive websites, and there are a lot of other plugins and things like that. Something called jQuery, which this won't cover, is really useful. So let's have a look at the syllabus. We're only going to be doing these non-pro sections. So we'll start with this introduction and then work our way through variables, conditionals, which is sort of like true false functions, basically writing sections of code that we can reuse over and over. Scope basically sort of means what is visible and not, and how far we can reach something. Arrays, essentially lists of items. Loops, doing things over and over. Iterators, ticking through how we count through lists. Like we iterate, move through items one by one. Objects is a really important concept in object-oriented programming. We basically create something to model what actually the real world sort of exists. We make like a blueprint, and a class is generally a blueprint, and an object is when we actually use that blueprint to create or make something. And obviously browser compatibility, each browser will do things slightly differently, so we need to check for those, and then we'll have a look at some of these other sections as well. So let's get started. So with the window, there are going to be three sections. On the left, all our instructions. Usually there's a middle section where we write our code, and then on the right, our answers. So we've got a little streak, so let's get rid of that. And we're going to click the next button to move on. So we're going to read through our instructions. So this sort of talks about what I've actually said about JavaScript. So we're going to get to know some of the basics. And most of them, there are little cheat sheets, which have a summary of the information from the section. So our main thing we're going to use in this introduction is called console.log. And it tells us that this is used to print out messages to the console and other info. So we've got an example of how it works, and then the code. So let's just tab back onto the first one. I'm going to go next. So now we can see where our code's going to be written and where the answer is going to go. So we're talking about the console, and so console means basically a text output, and dot, do something with the console, and log, that's actually a method or a function which basically logs something to the screen. So behind the scenes, when we write console.log, we don't need to know how that actually works. We just need to know we can give it some information and it will tell the computer to write it and print it out to the screen. So let's just get a first one, console.log, and we're going to do hello world. Now, another thing that we actually do is when we actually write strings or pieces of text, we either include them inside a set of speech marks. We can either use double quotes or single quotes. And if I hit the run button, the program's run and it shows the output on the right hand side. So we get down to our instructions. So we've got number one, use console.log to log our age. So we're going to put an age in, and we're going to be 256. We're going to run that. And it goes and marks it, tells us that that's right. If we got it wrong, we can use the stuck get a hint. Number of weeks we've been programming. I'm using the semicolon at the end of each line. Is sort of the equivalent of an enter or a full stop in like English. So we've got that, and now this whole exercise is finished. I can click on next and go to the next exercise. Comments, really useful, and we often forget them. Basically ways of explaining what's going on in the code. There are two types: a single line comment, which starts // and we use comments to describe what our code is going to do. And there's also a multi-line comment, which starts with /* and then finishes with // and anything between those gets commented out. So we can see here all of that stuff there is not actually going to work. And you can also put comments at the end of a line as well. It just means when you use the // it just means everything after that is ignored. So on line 1 we're going to put a single line comment that says opening line, and we're going to run that. And bottom 6 comments, so this one here is a bit hard to sort of see. You can see we have 6 lines, so we're going to have /*, and it starts going grey, and then a closing comment. And things often go in pairs, like an opening bracket, a closing bracket, and so on. So we've finished that one. Let's move on to the next. So we've got data types. So there's different ways of storing pieces of information. So we can have numbers, it can be decimals, whole numbers, strings, which is basically a piece of text, and as I mentioned earlier, strings have little either single quotes or double quotes. We need to make sure we have the same for each. Boolean, true, false, 0 and 1, yes, no, on, off. Remember, computers are binary, they think in zeros and ones, so at its core, we're basically always using a Boolean value. Null, we use the special keyword null, lowercase n, basically means nothing, there's no values. And there's also keyword undefined, which, absence of a value. It means happened more by accident. Null is what we use when we are sure we want to store, don't want to have something empty. Undefined means, hey, we tried to do something, but it's never actually been used yet. Happens more by accident. Symbols, I'm not going to worry too much about those at this point. And object, collections of related data. So we can use a blueprint to basically set up, let's say, an object for a person which has data about their age, their name, and it can join those together. Primitive data, single pieces of data, and objects are more complex where we can join bits together. So what we've got here, a string that's printed out, and then printing out a number. So we're going to log the string JavaScript on the console. So when it's asking that, we're going to use console.log and create a string called JavaScript. Now I could use either the single quotes or the double quotes. Okay, log the number 2011. So I'm just going to put in an error here, and I'll show you what happens when you get a question wrong. So it's given an error. It's told us, hey, on JavaScript line 2 there was something. Lag is not a function. Okay, so I'm going to change that. But I'm also actually going to just make another error here, so it's giving a different number. And it's told us, did you put 2011 in your console.log statement? Ah, no I didn't. So let's go and fix that up and run that. Awesome. And line 3, I'm going to print out woohoo. And it's really picky with the spelling. So I'm actually going to change that to a lowercase I there, and I'll show you what happens. It's given an error. Oh, actually that was because I didn't put a semicolon at the end. No, it's picked it out. We can actually view solutions if we need to. But we really want to try and do the work on our own. Awesome. And code, hashtag Codecademy. Missed a bit on the second line. And we want 20.49 to be logged. So we've got strings, a number which is an integer because it's a whole number, and then a number that is a float because it's a decimal. Now, next bit is arithmetic operators. So this is mathematical equations. So we've got common ones: addition, subtraction, multiplication is the asterisk, and normal division is a single slash, and to get the remainder of the division is using percentage. So the first four work as we expect. So we can actually see we've got a little comment. So 3 plus 4 is 7, 9 divided by 3. Now, the percentage one, the remainder, it's called modulo division. So 11 modulo 3 gives us 2. We can fit 3 into 11 3 times, which gives us 9. And then 11 minus 9 gives us 2 remainder. So we're going to add 3.5 to our age. So it was 256 plus 3.5. You don't have to have the spaces between, but it makes it easier to read. Yes, we got that one. Current year minus 1969. Yeah, we can also just press Control Enter to run that, and console.log is divide 65 by 240. What's our last one? So 0.2708 divided by 100. Oh shit, no, multiply by. And we've got that, and there's a bit more information there. Next we've got string concatenation. Concatenation means joining together or appending. So when we have two strings together, like hi plus ya, it'll join those two together. Same with whoa plus whoa, I love to, and code. Note where the spaces are, it then prints out the spaces, but if you don't have a space, it won't actually have the spaces. If you just used a plus inside them, as we saw before, it just adds those numbers together. So we've got, like, you know, a space here, space at the back, or a space in the middle. Makes it just a bit easier. So let's console.log this, and we're going to join hello and world together and concatenate the strings exactly without any additional characters. Okay, so we've left out the space. Now we can do this next one a few different ways. So we can actually do adding a space there. So if you've got, like, want to join someone's first name and last name together, that's when we might want to use that. Later on, in the next lesson, when we look at variables, that's going to become a lot more useful. Okay, properties. So when we've actually seen a property of the console already here by using .log. Basically, it's something that one of these bits of data knows how to do. So a string knows its length. So dot, do something with whatever's on the left, and get its length. So we're going to get the answer to how many letters or characters are in that. So console.log. Okay, what? Teaching the world how to code. And we're going to do dot length and run that, and it prints out our message. Our answer is 30 because there are 30 characters in there. There are some other sort of methods that we're going to, like to uppercase, so we can convert it all into the upper letters, and starts with, and we can check to see if it's got a certain letter that it's going to start with. So we want to turn Codecademy into uppercase. We're going to use the string dot, do something with the string, and we want to go to uppercase. Now I'm going to talk about the little structure here. So this is what's called camel case. So each new word starts with a capital letter. This just makes it easier to sort of see the different bits of text that is actually in there and the names, because we can't have spaces in these instructions. So we're going to do remove white space. Let's actually run that first one and see what happens. So we need to remove white space. So we're going to actually have to go look at our JavaScript documentation. So these are the set of rules for how JavaScript works. So let's click on that, and it's going to take us off to our JavaScript rules. Okay, so we've got our syntax, string text, no. So this talks about how it's used, what some of the different characters are and how it works. Some different methods. Okay, so we can do some long strings. Returning, no, don't seem to have anything there. Constructors, methods, okay. And so I'm going to look at the trim method. Okay. So it tells us how to work. Greeting.trim basically removes white space from both ends of the string. So let's try that. So we're going to use a dot trim and then run that, and it removes any of the white space. So it removed all those white extra characters at the start and at the end. Okay, we've got some built-in objects, so things that have been built in and created. So math.random basically will get us to be able to print out a random number. By default, it creates a random number between 0 and 1. And if we want it to be between 0 and 50, we can multiply it by 50. So it's a bit of a hack way of getting around that. Now we can do math.floor, basically runs it down to the nearest whole number. And there are similar things. Once again, in the documentation, there are other methods that we can use. So if you ever wanted to sort of find out that, you might go JavaScript, round up, and it basically, W3 Schools, really good useful resource, tells you what we'll do, and we can try it out, see how it works. So it's rounded 1.4 up to 2. Okay, so inside of console.log, we want to use math.random and multiply it by 100. So we're getting a number between 0 and 100. Okay, I've spelled that incorrectly because I've got a second capital letter there. Okay, now math.floor to make the output a whole number. What we're going to do here is what's called encapsulate. So I want to turn all of this into a whole number. So I'm going to first just put that bit. So I want math.floor, and then we've got our little instructions there, but inside that set of brackets, I want to include all of that other information. So essentially, find the floor of this. So now I've got 48. A few other different ways we can actually achieve the same result. Find the random number, get the floor of it. No, actually this one won't work because it's working the wrong way. Okay, So find a method, the smallest integer greater than or equal to a decimal number. Okay, so it's going to be quite similar. Okay. Actually, we don't want to use math.random, we just want to use 43.8. So we want to get the answer 44. So we're going to use math. If we go to our documentation, we can find out some information, but there's a function called ceiling, or ceil, which tells it to round that one up. And check if it is an integer. So let's have a look. So we've got our static properties, static methods. We've got number.isInteger. Determines whether the press value is an integer. That sounds like what we want here. So let's try that. And we want number 2017. And I'm just going to put 13.4. One that's going to give us a false result. And so that's not what we want. So let's just now change that to what it actually asked. And this is actually giving us a Boolean, a true false value. Okay, so we looked at over here console.log, different types of comments, strings, numbers, addition, multiplication, and some functions. So that finishes off this section. So next up, I think we're going to be looking at variables.